Hello and welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we're talking about a shift in global power that's not happening with a sudden explosion, but with the steady, quiet construction of a new world order. You might have heard the acronym BRICS, but what started as a catchy term for investors is now a major geopolitical force, challenging the long-standing dominance of the West. What is BRICS? What are its goals? And could it truly build a new economic reality? Let's dive in. The story begins in 2001. An economist at Goldman Sachs named Jim O'Neill coined the term BRIC to highlight the massive economic potential of four emerging markets: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. It was initially just an investment thesis, but these nations saw an opportunity. They shared a desire for more influence on the world stage, a stage they felt was dominated by Western powers and institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. So they took this economic idea and turned it into a political reality. In 2009, the leaders of these four countries held their first formal summit. A year later, in 2010, the group expanded for the first time, inviting South Africa to join. This added the S to the acronym, creating the BRICS we know. This was a significant move. It wasn't just about economic potential anymore. It was about representing the global South and fostering cooperation between developing nations. Fast forward to 2023, and the Bloc underwent its most dramatic transformation yet. The 5 founding members invited 6 more countries to join. While Argentina eventually declined, 5 others officially became members in January 2024: Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. And there's more to come, with Indonesia expected to join in early 2025. This expansion, sometimes called BRICS+, has massively increased the group's global footprint. With these new members, BRICS now represents about 45% of the world's population and over a third of the entire global economy when measured by purchasing power. This expansion was a key goal for countries like China and Russia, who see it as a way to build a strong counterweight to the United States. Other members, like India, see it a bit differently. They point to the inclusion of nations like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which have strong ties to the West, as a way to keep the bloc from becoming purely confrontational. And the door is still open. A new category of partner countries was created in 2024, including nations like Malaysia, Nigeria, Turkey, and Vietnam, allowing even more countries to engage with BRICS initiatives. So what is the grand plan? A huge piece of the puzzle is economic, and it centers around one key concept: de-dollarization. This is the process of reducing the world's reliance on the US dollar for international trade and finance. Why do they want this? It's both strategic and practical. The dollar's dominance gives the United States immense power. It allows them to impose financial sanctions that can cripple economies, a vulnerability that Russia, Iran, and China are all too familiar with. So the BRICS nations are actively working to chip away at the dollar's supremacy. They're doing this in a few key ways. First, they're promoting trade directly between each other, using their own local currencies, completely bypassing the dollar. Second, they're building alternative payment systems. You've probably heard of SWIFT, the Western-dominated system for international bank transfers. Well, China has developed its own version called CIPS, and Russia has one called SPFS. The BRICS group is even working on a decentralized system called BRICS Pay. And third, and perhaps most importantly, they're creating their own financial institutions. This brings us to 2 of the bloc's most significant achievements. The first is the New Development Bank, or NDB, established in 2015. Think of it as a BRICS-led alternative to the World Bank and the IMF, where developing countries have long felt their voices were drowned out. With an authorized capital of $100 billion, the NDB finances infrastructure and sustainable development projects not just in BRICS countries, but in other emerging economies as well. By 2022, It had already invested over $30 billion in projects for renewable energy, clean water, and transportation, and it makes loans in various currencies, which further supports that de-dollarization goal. The second major institution is the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, or CRA. This is essentially a collective safety net. It's a $100 billion pool of funds that member countries can draw from if they face short-term financial instability or a currency crisis. This reduces the need for them to go, cap in hand, to the IMF, which often comes with strict conditions they see as infringing on their sovereignty. The CRA is a powerful tool for enhancing their collective financial stability. But BRICS isn't just about money. It has a clear political agenda. The ultimate goal is to forge what they call a more equitable and just multipolar world order. This means a world where power isn't concentrated in one place, namely Washington, D.C. How do they plan to do this? A major objective is reforming global institutions. They are consistently calling for a complete overhaul of the United Nations, especially the Security Council, to give developing nations a permanent and stronger voice. They're also pushing for similar reforms at the IMF and World Bank to make them better reflect the modern global economy, not the one that existed after World War II. In essence, the Bloc is challenging the very idea of a unipolar world. By strengthening their own political and security cooperation, they aim to create a more balanced international system. For members like China and Russia, this is explicitly about countering Western hegemony, pushing back against what they see as unilateral sanctions and economic bullying. Of course, this is an incredibly ambitious project, and it's not without its major challenges and criticisms. The biggest hurdle might be the Bloc itself. The member countries are incredibly diverse. They have different political systems, from democracies like Brazil and India to authoritarian states like China and Russia. They have different economic models, and, critically, different national interests. For example, the ongoing and sometimes tense border dispute between China and India is a constant source of friction within the group. Another major concern is the sheer weight of China. As the world's second-largest economy, China's influence within the Bloc is immense, and some members worry that their own voices could be overshadowed by Beijing's agenda. Critics also argue that BRICS is more united by what it opposes, Western dominance, than by what it's actually for. Forging a coherent, positive vision for global governance that everyone can agree on is a monumental task. And finally, that goal of de-dollarization? While they are making progress, the US dollar is incredibly entrenched in the global financial system. Its role is built on decades of trust, liquidity, and deep markets. Creating a viable alternative won't happen overnight. It will be a long, difficult process. So where does this leave us? The expansion of BRICS has undeniably transformed it into a major force on the world stage. Its focus on building an alternative financial architecture, its push for a multipolar world, and its sheer demographic and economic weight are all signs of a profound shift in the global landscape. Whether the Bloc can overcome its internal divisions and create a truly new world order remains the big question. Its future will depend on its ability to forge a unified vision and on how the West, particularly the United States, responds. Some analysts argue that a more confrontational stance from the West could actually backfire, pushing the BRICS nations closer together and accelerating their quest for an alternative system. One thing is certain. BRICS has already succeeded in changing the global conversation. It has given a powerful, unified voice to the aspirations of the global South. The era of a single dominant vision for how the world should be run may be coming to an end. The world is watching, and what this rising power bloc does next will shape the 21st century.